Welcome to tonight's sleep story, Waves of Aethralis. If you find this story soothing and enjoyable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Before we begin the journey to the mythical island of Aethralis, we'll start with a gentle breathing exercise to help you relax and settle in. If you'd prefer to skip straight to the story, you can find the timestamps for each chapter in the description of this video. The story you're about to experience is a soothing tale of golden shores, whispering forests, and tranquil waters, a place that appears only under the gentlest of tides, waiting to cradle you in calm and peace. Let's take a moment to prepare for rest. Find a comfortable position, letting your body sink fully into your bed or chair. Adjust your blanket or pillow until you feel perfectly supported, surrounded by warmth and stillness. Close your eyes softly and begin to tune into your breathing. There's no need to force anything. Simply notice the rise and fall of your chest as you inhale and exhale. Let's take a deep, soothing breath together now. Slowly inhale through your nose, imagining a wave of calm washing over you, reaching every corner of your body. Hold for just a moment, then exhale gently through your mouth, as if releasing a quiet sigh, letting go of the day's thoughts and tension. With each breath, picture yourself drifting further into a quiet sea, the water perfectly calm, supporting you with ease. Breathe in. Feel yourself grow lighter. Breathe out. Let everything soften. If your mind begins to wander, that's okay. Let your thoughts drift by, as though they're leaves floating on a slow-moving stream. Each word of this story will guide you deeper into rest. There's nothing for you to do now. Simply listen, breathe, and allow the gentle world of Aethralis to carry you into sleep. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Whispering Tides. The oars dipped lazily into the water, breaking its glassy surface with the faintest of splashes. Each stroke moved the little wooden boat further into the endless expanse of calm, pale blue sea. Lyra sat quietly, her hands wrapped loosely around the smooth handle of an oar, her gaze lost somewhere on the horizon. The sky was soft and muted, a watercolor wash of lavender and gold, as though dawn itself was still deciding whether to rise. There was no wind, no hurry, only the quiet rhythm of her rowing and the faint hum of the world exhaling around her. She let the oars rest for a moment, listening to the sound of water lapping gently against the sides of the boat. It was a sound as old as time, one that seemed to flow not just from the sea, but from some deeper, more ancient place. A place where all noise was softened, where all edges were smoothed. Lyra tilted her face to the sky, breathing in the salt-tinged air. It smelled faintly of lavender and something else, something sweet and unfamiliar, as though the sea carried whispers of forgotten places. Somewhere beyond the mist ahead, the faintest shape began to emerge. It was so subtle it might have been a trick of the light, a faint smudge in the distance where sea and sky met. Lyra blinked once, twice, then tilted her head as though the movement would sharpen her focus. She felt no urgency, only a soft curiosity, as if the shape had always been there, waiting for her to notice. And still the boat drifted, drawn forward by something unseen but gentle, like a hand placed lightly against her back. The shape grew more defined as the boat glided forward. It was an island, though not like any Lyra had seen before. The edges seemed blurred, hazy, as if the land itself was unsure whether to be solid or dream. The sands glowed faintly, not brightly but softly, like embers cooling in the night. Above, a thin veil of mist curled and twirled, as though it too belonged here, a natural part of this strange, tranquil place. The air around her seemed to hum, not with a noise, but a feeling, a low vibration that tickled her skin and settled somewhere deep inside her chest. As her boat's bow nudged the soft, wet sand, Lyra dipped one foot out, testing the shore. It was warm, despite the cool sheen of water that ran over it in delicate waves. She stepped carefully, her feet sinking just enough to leave the faintest impression. Turning back to look at her boat, she noticed it rocking gently, tethered by nothing and yet held fast in place. Lyra did not question it. This place seemed to exist outside the rules of the world. She knew rules of reason, of gravity, of tides and time. Here, things simply were asterisk, and Lyra let herself accept it. The sound of the waves followed her as she walked, slow and steady, as if they matched her breathing. Ahead, the island stretched on, its golden sands leading to shadowed groves of trees with slender, silver trunks. The leaves fluttered, though there was no wind, creating the sound of soft whispers layered over the wash of the sea. Lyra paused, letting the sounds settle over her like a warm blanket. Somewhere far off, a faint chime rang out clear and light, like glass catching sunlight. It faded quickly, as though it had only been a brief memory. Her footsteps slowed as she reached a small rise in the sand. She turned back toward the water, gazing out at the sea that now looked impossibly vast, pale and still. Her boat bobbed gently where she had left it, a small speck on the water's edge. The horizon was no longer visible. A faint mist had crept in behind her, veiling all that lay beyond. Yet there was no fear, no sense of being trapped, only peace, as though the world itself had folded itself into this one quiet moment. Lyra breathed deeply, feeling the air slip smoothly into her chest and out again, her body as calm as the tides. Above her, the sky had settled into a deeper shade of lavender, the first stars appearing like scattered seeds of light. They seemed brighter here, unhurried, as they blinked awake one by one. Lyra watched them for a moment longer, then turned toward the silvered trees that beckoned with their whispering leaves. Somewhere beyond them, she felt at the heart of the island. It was not a voice, not a command, but a knowing. She had come to this place for a reason, and whatever awaited her would unfold gently in its own time. Without another thought, she took her first step toward the shadows of the grove, leaving only her footprints behind. The sea sighed softly in the distance, and the world grew quieter still. Chapter 2. The Golden Shore. The silver trees welcomed Lyra with a softness that felt almost alive. Their trunks shimmered faintly under the dimming sky, and their branches arched overhead, forming a cathedral of light and shadow. The air within the grove was cool and still, carrying with it the faint scent of eucalyptus and rain. Each leaf fluttered with the gentlest of sounds, like pages being turned in a distant library. Lyra's footsteps were hushed by the moss that blanketed the ground, its texture plush and soothing beneath her bare feet. She paused, closing her eyes for a moment, allowing the forest's whispers to settle into the quiet corners of her mind. As she walked deeper, she noticed small orbs of pale light flickering among the branches. Fireflies, though unlike any she had seen before, drifted lazily through the air, leaving faint trails of silver behind them. Their glow was soft, not enough to light her way, but enough to suggest she was not alone. Lyra extended a hand as one passed near her, watching as the tiny creature hovered for a moment before continuing its slow, aimless path. It was as though time moved differently. Here the fireflies drifted without urgency, the leaves stirred without effort, and the world itself seemed suspended in a tranquil breath. At the center of the grove, Lyra found a clearing bathed in faint golden light. A small stream wound through the clearing, its water so clear it seemed to hum rather than flow. Smooth stones lined its bed, each one reflecting the sky's muted colors in perfect detail. Lyra knelt at its edge, dipping her fingers into the cool water. The surface rippled outward, slow and deliberate, as though reluctant to disturb the stillness. Watching the patterns widen and fade, she felt her thoughts quiet, the last remnants of her worries dissolving into the flow. A deep calm wrapped around her like the folds of a heavy, familiar cloak. A soft voice broke the silence, as light as the breeze that stirred the leaves. "You've come far, haven't you?" Lyra turned her head, though she was unsurprised to see the figure standing on the other side of the stream. The man was as ethereal as the grove itself, his outline faint and shimmery, like sunlight reflected on water. He had the appearance of someone ageless, with calm eyes the color of morning mist. His presence carried no weight, no intrusion. He seemed as much a part of the grove as the trees and fireflies. Lyra did not speak, but nodded once, acknowledging both the question and its answer. The figure stepped forward, his movements soundless as he approached the stream. "You've been listening," he said, his tone like a lullaby, rhythmic and steady. "That is why you found Aethralis." He knelt, mirroring Lyra's posture, and traced his fingers across the water's surface. "The island reveals itself only to those who hear its song, to those ready to be still." The stream seemed to deepen its hum at his touch, and Lyra found herself watching the ripples again, their rhythm matching the steady pulse in her chest. When he looked up, his eyes held hers, calm and steady. "You are welcome here." Lyra didn't need to ask his name. It hung in the air, unspoken and unnecessary, like everything else in this place. She felt no urge to fill the silence, no need to question or understand. Instead, she rose slowly to her feet, sensing the figure's gaze following her as she turned back toward the path. The fireflies lingered near her shoulders, their glow casting faint halos of light as she walked. The sounds of the stream and the whispers of the leaves blurred together, a quiet symphony that carried her forward. A deep warmth had settled within her chest, as though she had been seen and known in a way that needed no words. By the time Lyra stepped beyond the grove, the sky had deepened into twilight. Stars blinked in clusters overhead, their reflections shimmering faintly on the sea beyond. The sand, though darkened now, still held its golden glow, faint and steady as a heartbeat. Lyra walked toward the water's edge, pausing just as the tide curled gently toward her feet. The air carried the faint chime she had heard before, clearer now, like the single note of a song waiting to be sung. She closed her eyes and stood still, listening until the sounds of the waves, the breeze, and her own breath became one. Chapter 3. The Pool of Still Waters. The path beyond the grove led Lyra into a place where the world seemed to hold its breath. The sounds of the sea and the whispering leaves had faded, replaced by a vast, expectant silence. Ahead, the trees thinned, their silver trunks giving way to an open glade where moonlight poured down in soft ribbons. At the center of the clearing sat a pool of water, perfectly still, its surface reflecting the sky above with such clarity that it seemed to hold another world within it. Lyra approached slowly, each step muffled by the moss-covered ground, as though the earth itself urged her to move gently. The air here was cooler, tinged with the faint scent of damp stone and something older, something unknowable. Lyra knelt at the water's edge, feeling its coolness radiate outward like a whisper against her skin. The surface was so still that it seemed solid, a sheet of liquid glass that refused to ripple. As she looked deeper, the reflection of the stars seemed to blink and dance, forming patterns that tugged at the edge of a memory. Her breath slowed without effort, as though the pool drew the rhythm of her body into its quiet harmony. From the far side of the pool, the shimmering figure appeared again, though his outline was fainter now, like mist unraveling at dawn. "The pool of still waters," he said softly, his voice flowing across the glade like the first note of a song. "It shows you only what you are ready to see." He gestured toward the water, his movements slow and deliberate. "Sit and let the stillness carry you." Lyra obeyed without hesitation, lowering herself to sit cross-legged by the pool. The moss cushioned her as the cool air wrapped around her shoulders, light as a sigh. She watched the water, her gaze fixed on its perfect calm. Gradually, shapes began to form within the reflection. At first, they were no more than ripples of light and shadow, but soon they grew clearer waves rolling onto a shore, leaves rustling in a grove, stars blinking against a deep blue sky. The images were simple, unremarkable, and yet they brought a sense of peace that settled into the quiet corners of her mind. Each scene lingered just long enough to be absorbed, then dissolved back into the water, replaced by another, gentler vision. The figure's voice broke the silence again, though it was softer now, almost part of the air itself. "Here, the mind slows. The weight you carry will fall away if you let it." Lyra closed her eyes, allowing her other senses to take hold. The coolness of the moss against her palms, the faint scent of the earth, and the feeling of stillness all around her wove together like a blanket. She could no longer tell where her breaths ended and the silence began. Her shoulders softened, her body easing into a state of quiet she had not known in years. For what felt like hours, or perhaps only minutes, Lyra sat there, her thoughts drifting like leaves on a slow-moving stream. The pool seemed to hum, a low vibration that soothed her from within, erasing the sharp edges of worry and thought. When she finally opened her eyes, the figure was gone, and the clearing felt emptier, though no less welcoming. Lyra stood slowly, her movements fluid, her mind clear. The pool's reflection remained unchanged, its surface holding only the stars and the sky, as still and timeless as the island itself. Without a word, Lyra turned back to the path, her steps silent, her heart steady as the tides. Chapter 4. The Garden of Soft Winds. Lyra followed the path as it wound gently upward, the moss beneath her feet giving way to smooth, pale stone. The air began to shift, carrying with it a new sound, the faint, airy rustle of wind moving through unseen spaces. Cresting a low hill, she found herself standing at the edge of a garden that seemed suspended between earth and sky. Slender archways of silver stone framed clusters of flowers and plants, their shapes delicate and otherworldly, their colors soft as dusk. The breeze flowed through the garden in a gentle current, carrying the faint scent of jasmine and something cooler, like morning dew. She stepped forward, drawn into the garden's stillness. The plants swayed as the wind passed over them, though the movement was measured, almost deliberate, as if they danced to a rhythm only they could hear. Leaves shaped like soft fans fluttered without sound, and petals of pale lavender and cream trembled faintly, their edges shimmering in the waning light. At the center of the garden stood a circular stone bench, surrounded by flowers that glowed faintly in the twilight. Lyra sat down, the stone cool beneath her palms, and let her eyes drift half-closed as the wind curled gently around her. The sound of the wind was like a voice without words, steady, soft, and reassuring. It did not push or pull, but moved with a purpose, brushing against her skin as lightly as a sigh. In its wake, Lyra felt the weight of her thoughts fall away, like dust shaken loose from a heavy cloak. She lifted her face to the breeze, listening as it seemed to weave around her, carrying faint melodies that lingered just beyond comprehension. They were not songs, not truly, but fragments of something ancient and soothing, a language she felt rather than understood. From the far corner of the garden, a shape emerged, not sudden or startling, but slow and natural, as though it had always been there. A small creature, no larger than a cat, padded forward on soft, wide paws. Its fur shimmered like the surface of a pond in moonlight, and its eyes held the same pale glow as the flowers. It approached without hesitation, its movements unhurried, and sat at Lyra's feet, staring up at her with quiet curiosity. For a moment the two regarded each other in silence, the breeze curling between them like an invisible thread. "You are part of this place now," came a voice, not aloud but within Lyra's mind. She did not startle, for the words felt as natural as her own thoughts. The creature blinked slowly, its expression serene, as though it had spoken through the wind itself. "Breathe in its stillness. The island listens." Lyra obeyed, inhaling deeply as the air filled her lungs like water filling a deep, empty well. The breeze seemed to settle then, as though satisfied, and the creature rose again, padding silently back into the shadows where it had first appeared. The garden grew quieter, though the wind remained, flowing in softer currents now, like a lullaby reaching its final refrain. Lyra stayed seated for a while longer, her hands resting loosely in her lap as her breathing matched the rhythm of the air. Every petal, every leaf, every soft note of the unseen wind had worked its way into her being, leaving her calm and weightless. As the stars above grew brighter, Lyra stood, her movements unhurried, and stepped back onto the path. The breeze followed her like a quiet companion, brushing gently at her back as she moved once more toward the heart of the island. Chapter 5. The Bell of the Horizon. The path grew smoother as Lyra walked, the stone beneath her feet now warm as if it held the day's final light. Ahead, the landscape opened into a vast, quiet expanse where the land met the sea in perfect harmony. A low hill sloped gently toward the horizon, where a single stone bell tower stood, weathered and pale against the lavender sky. It seemed both ancient and untouched, as though it had been carved by time itself. A soft chime drifted toward her, light and faint, as if the wind had found a voice in the hollow of the bell. Lyra approached slowly, her steps matching the rhythm of the waves rolling against the distant shore. The tower's base rested on a small platform of smooth stone, its surface etched with patterns that curved like tides or ripples spreading across water. The bell itself, suspended in an open archway, swayed gently, though there was no visible wind. Its chime rang out again, clearer this time, a single tone that hung in the air like a silver thread. Lyra stood still, listening as the sound seemed to settle into her chest, resonating quietly through her very bones. Without understanding why, Lyra placed her hand against the stone of the tower. It was cool and smooth, humming faintly beneath her touch. Another chime rang out, softer now, the sound deepening as though in response to her presence. The tone flowed outward, blending seamlessly with the sound of the sea, the two becoming one. The waves curled gently against the shore, their rhythm slow and deliberate, like the beating of a great unseen heart. Lyra breathed in deeply, feeling the pull of the tide, the weightless sensation of being carried without effort. The voice of the shimmering figure returned then, not spoken but carried on the wind. This is where it ends, and where it begins. Lyra turned her gaze toward the horizon, where the last threads of light met the water in a line so seamless it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. The figure stood at the edge of the platform now, his form faint and shifting like mist over calm seas. Aethralis sings to those who listen, he continued. It gives what is needed, then returns to its rest. Lyra closed her eyes, the chime ringing gently through her mind, repeating like a memory. With each note, she felt herself letting go of questions, of thoughts, of the boundaries between herself and the world. There was nothing left to hold on to, nothing left to do but asterisk be asterisk. The sound of the waves, the breeze, and the bell folded together into a single soothing hum. Lyra's breaths grew slower, deeper, as though she had become part of the rhythm itself, an extension of the island's stillness. When she opened her eyes, the figure was gone, and the bell stood silent. The sea stretched endlessly before her, its surface smooth and dark, reflecting the first stars of the night. Lyra turned back toward the path, the stone cool beneath her feet. She walked with ease, her steps light and unhurried, as the soft sounds of the waves followed her. The island was quiet now. Its song carried only in the faintest chime of the bell, echoing gently into the horizon as Lyra made her way back into the waiting dark.